Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Okay. I'd like to call this May 9th meeting of the Rockingham County School Board to order. Welcome to you all. It's a much nicer day today than it was yesterday, so we're glad to have you out on a nice Monday evening. The first item of business that we have is to approve our agenda, and if it be the board's desire, I will entertain a motion for approval of that agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Lohr. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the agenda as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask that you all please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I invite you to join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Next, we move to public comments. The rules will apply as we have been applying them in order to be consistent. And I would invite Sarah Bowman to the board, or to the podium, I'm sorry.
Thank you, school board members and Superintendent Scheichel, for your service to the community and allowing me to speak today. My name is Sarah Bowman, and I'm a parent volunteer for the Spotswood High School's Theater Booster Club. As you may recall, the Spotswood High School one-act troupe is honored to be the Virginia representative for the Commonwealth after being named Chapter Select at the Virginia Thespian Festival in January. This is the equivalent of winning the Virginia State competition. In June, the one-act troupe will compete in the next tier of competition at the International Thespian Festival with their performance of Elephant's Graveyard. In addition, some of the students qualified to compete in singing competitions during the festival. I come to you today to request any policy-allowed funding to be provided for our fundraising to get all 29 students to Indiana and to learn what the process is to receive those funds. I want to also thank you, sponsors, and Dr. Scheichel for taking a pie in the face for the team. I also have information about what we've raised, and I've written it here. And if you're just wondering, it's just how to get a hold of us and how to donate. So nothing too fancy. So that's why I'm here. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you that here or just talk and then sit down.
I think that we may be able to address some of that perhaps later on in the meeting, if you can hang around there.
Sure.
And I'm supposing that there are some folks here. I personally can't answer that right off the top of my head, but we will maybe be able to call on some of our experts
Okay.
to tell us a little bit about how that traditionally works. I would appreciate it if you would, and I don't know about the rest of the board members, but if you would email me information about contributing.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
And that's on the county webpage there, my
Okay.
email address.
Absolutely. And for very old school people, I did bring a bucket and I'll be here for a while.
Okay.
So please join me. I've been pretty much hustling every penny to get these kids there.
There you
Thank
go.
you very much for your time.
Thank you. I went to States for the one act play when I was at Montevideo. I don't know how I managed to do it. They needed someone to play a lawyer, and I guess I was the. All right, next to a call upon Brooke Garrison.
So there is a survey going around about ESSER's funds, and I want to make sure everyone's educated about what those monies goes towards. It goes towards schools promoting vaccines, wearing masks, continuity of staff and infrastructure. Our school seems to spend it on ventilation, even though very low benefit that it is given to the school, as well as mask benefit, which I'm so glad that you guys chose to drop it by now, because you saw it didn't do anything for the pandemic. For some of these funds, you've chose to try and vote yourselves an unsustainable 5% raise, which I'm glad that you've walked back. But you're very confused. I've seen the funds in your financial statements go towards infrastructure, but it's very poorly defined on how you're going to use it. So the last FOIA request that I've had is that you're using the money to pay for Linville Edom. People wanted to keep it open, and you're using it to keep open. So anyway, there's a very confusing way of how you want to use the spend. And because of that, I'm really asking everybody to vote against accepting the ESSER's funds. It's giving all these schools millions and millions of dollars, and it's just causing inflation. And I think it's the inflation that you're seeing at the gas pump. It's inflation that you're seeing at the grocery store. And yet your salaries are not going up to match that. So I'm asking you to please vote against that. And yes, I was here on May 24th, the one person to vote against that last time. And so I want to make sure you guys still get the resonating message for that. So I also want to know, make sure I use this as an educational thing where people were all focused on the COVID vaccine, but while our eyes were on that ball, they added another 5 vaccines to the school. They have not provided any safety benefit. So that is what some of this ESSER's funds is doing. They had nurses in front of the schools. They bussed kids to go get shots. We thought this was happening in Australia and another country, and no, it was happening right on our front door, that our kids were getting vaccinated with no safety information. And I would like everybody to please do their own personal research. There's a court case, ICAN, it's an acronym, versus HHS, Health and Human Services. And it's basically saying that this nonprofit organization won because there's been no safety reporting on any vaccines that have happened for the last 30 plus years. So while we thought we were getting our kids safe shots, there's been no reporting, no safety studies on this. COVID is no different than any vaccines. And meanwhile, they are bussing our kids around, having nurses there with needles to try and pump these injections into our kids' arms. And I would like it to stop. So do not vote for ESSER's that helps fund all of this stuff. We should not be normalizing this. We've been standing here at school board meetings, hearing a lady announce that her kid got a COVID vaccine and was now diagnosed with AIDS. We hear it. If you look at the recordings of these meetings, it has happened. And I just want to stand here and make sure everyone gets the public announcement. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you. All right. Next, we will move to highlights by board members, and I will begin. Mr. Falk. Thank you. Dr. McQuilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. I have several highlights, and I'd like to begin with Teacher Appreciation Week, which we just celebrated, and I think we need to give our teachers a great big hand. Thank you. My next highlight, it has to do with the Code of Ethics. The Rotary this afternoon hosted their Code of Ethics Award for students in every single one of our schools in the city and the county, including public and private schools. And I thought that I would bring with me the booklet and to tell you how these students were chosen. It said criteria for selection. The students have to be truthful, fair, consistent, dependable, have integrity, service to and concern for others, friendliness, depth of commitments, and reverence. And there were some wonderful students highlighted at this award ceremony this afternoon. And my last one is I attended the FFA TA banquet and had a wonderful time. Everybody does a great job. And Miss Laura, we support FFA.
Thank you. Mr. Cross.
First of all, I want to say welcome to everyone that came out tonight, students and community members. Thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate your input, and thank you for coming and speaking tonight. I have two highlights tonight. I want to recognize Lynn Brigman, who's retiring as a counselor at Spotswood High School after 31 years. That's incredible, and I appreciate Ms. Brigman's dedication to Rockingham County Public Schools. She was a counselor when I was at high school at Spotswood, and then I had the opportunity as an SRO to work with her as a coworker at Spotswood and just get a chance to know her on a better level. And she's an incredible person. So Lynn, if you're watching this tonight, if you get a chance to watch it, thank you so much for your dedication. Thank you for all you've done. We're going to miss you at Spotswood High School and our community, our Blazer community. So thank you, Lynn. My second highlight tonight is another teacher, Tracy West. She's not retiring, but she's going to be quitting this year after 24 years with working with Rockingham County Public Schools and 21 years at Elkton Middle School. So Tracy is one of the longest working employees out at Elkton Middle School, and we're going to miss you, Tracy. And thank you so much for all you've done for the community, for the kids. My child had a chance to have you and to be on your track team, and I appreciate all you've done and your dedication to our public schools. So congratulations to her. Hopefully she'll come back and finish out her career a few more years, but God bless you, Tracy, and I wish the best for you. That's it.
Thank you. My first highlight is Farm to School Day at Lacey Spring Elementary School. I was able to take part in that. And usually, I love Farm to School Day, and I typically love it because it's so great to see the high school students working with the elementary school students, and the high school students take a leadership and they learn leadership skills and communication skills, and the little ones learn about agriculture. And I'm always amazed at how many are like, look at the dog when it's a sheep. So right here in Rockingham County, so it's so great. And then we put people in tractors, don't we? Officer Robinson, I have a picture of him in a tractor. So it's usually great fun to see that interaction. But at Lacey, I was absolutely struck by the number and how great this was for our special ed kids. The special ed kids get to come out and have they get to have textile experiences, and some of them find it overwhelming, and to see the teachers work with them, and because it can be an overwhelming day. Lots of kids running around and seeing really cool things, and the teachers work with them to find their comfort zone. It was just a really heartwarming experience, and it's always great to get out and see students. It's especially heartwarming to see our special ed students. So that was a super fun day for me. And then we also had Teacher of the Year. And thank you. Oh, and by the way, thank you for going to the FFA banquet. We have several more coming up that we're looking forward to. I was unable to make the TA one because I was working on FFA stuff, getting ready, I think, for the Farm to School Day. Thank you also. Charlotte and I got to attend the Teacher of the Year award ceremony, and that was a great, heartwarming day as well, to see so many of our teachers honored, and so many of our teachers that were honored for reading specialists or working with, trying to just help the kids learn to read and make up for some of that time that we've lost. And I hope Dr. Scheichel will share some of his comments with you, because they were spot on about how all of our teachers this year were Teachers of the Year, and how hard so many of our teachers have worked to bridge that gap with our students, and how it was so amazing to sit, awe-inspiring really, to sit in the room with the teachers that they're voted on by their peers, correct? To be chosen as the Teacher of the Year from their school. And several of the teachers had taught my children to read, which it was a struggle, and I'm thankful for those teachers. And several of I know several of the teachers, and I know it was an amazing class of teachers, and it was so awe-inspiring to be with them. And then I'll have to say, I'm super proud of our Teacher of the Year for Rockingham County Public Schools, FFA teacher Janae Pettit from Broadway High School. So we wish her lots of luck as she goes on to compete in Region 5. And I understand at least how hard that competition was. And I would again like to appreciate and thank all of our teachers of Rockingham County. So those are my big highlights for the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Dr. Scheichel?
First, congratulations to the SHS One Act team group for qualifying for the National Thespian Festival. We had a lot of fun at the Family Fun Night. Again, one of my soccer players had the joy of putting a pie in my face to raise money. And you had I think you had a yard sale on Saturday the 30th. And so congratulations to all the money you've raised. I know that's always difficult, especially when it's not an organization that is used to fundraising every year, right? So FFA or for Skills USA at MTC, a lot of students go to nationals every year. And so they have a little bit more of that infrastructure in place. And the booster club that you started at Spotswood on such a short notice, it's an amazing result, right, to be where you are with the fundraising. As a school division, 5-6 years ago, when students went to nationals, there was no contribution from the division. And I've communicated with you, a couple of years ago when we had Skills USA, for example, I believe go to California. We said, we need to provide a travel stipend. With FFA, it's similar. Some students, for example, last year, TA, they found some really cheap flights to Indianapolis, so they flew. The vast majority of students ride on the bus. And then with other nationals, it just depends on where they go. And so at this point, every student gets a $100 stipend, which again, for these large groups actually adds up to quite a bit of money. And so again, from the division perspective, we have to make sure that we're consistent. Again, every student receives that who qualifies. Sometimes students go to a national event to simply attend a conference, but if they actually qualify as part of a competition, then that's what the division contributes. And so again, we have lots and lots of students going to these. And so consistently we've done that. Like Mr. Breeden said, I encourage you to let us know again. I know you have a fundraising page, so we have to make sure that that gets the proper attention as well. So I'm sure the community will help in a way as well. We also had the Ag Production Field Day. So this was different from the Farm to School Day. So Mike and Susan Phillips, who I can't say enough about, who've opened their farm to our students through the Ag Production Program at MTC, again, put on an event with a lot of organizations that are showcasing, sustainability efforts. The different presentations there for the students who were incredibly attentive. It was really neat to see the students really being interested in some of these presentations. You know, they ranged from solar panels for water pumps. So where if you want to keep livestock away from the streams, you can fence it off, but use a solar panel and a pump that's not really all that expensive to pump that water into troughs where, you know, livestock then can get to that water. And we even got to experiment with an electric fence. So Mr. Fitzgerald can attest to the fact that a couple thousand volts in a wire, you know, you can feel it. He got to experience that, courtesy of the superintendent, who also experimented with it. So it was an amazing day. And again, Mike and Susan Phillips and their farm, it's an amazing project for us. And then, of course, our Lucy Sims Educator of the Year awards. We have Botkin Rose that sponsor the award at that event, Botkin Rose Law Firm, and then also Atlantic Union Bank sponsoring the actual Teacher of the Year celebrations. And you know, the last few years have been really, really difficult for teachers. We've asked teachers on the drop of a hat when we were told that schools had to close. We asked them to provide learning opportunities for students. And, you know, that wasn't in the playbook, and there was no playbook for that. And we asked them to provide these learning opportunities and then to switch to models where they would have students in the class, but every other day, half the students, but then also provide remote learning opportunities for students as families decided that they wanted their kids to remain at home. And then this year, you know, bringing students back with all that comes with the pandemic, where students and families that had the support in place progressed, and where other students, you know, who faced difficult situations really did not have the same starting point this year. And so there's a lot of work to be done, not only to address mental behavioral health, to address all the learning gaps. And so for teachers, you know, when we thought the pandemic was difficult for them, the post-pandemic year for many was the most difficult year in their education career, and how many of them stepped up. And to then have teachers selected from that group, you know, of teachers who already stepped up to the plate to an incredible level, to then be selected as the Teacher of the Year in a building is just an amazing honor. And it, as Ms. Lohr said, what was really encouraging was the recognition of teachers who are reading specialists. We made an enormous ask of our elementary teachers because literacy is key. We've said this in every innovation meeting. And we asked teachers to implement a science-based, science of reading-based learning program that's shown tremendous success across the country. And we asked that they implement this for this school year. And it's a really intensive program. And it was coordinated by a group of coaches and central office staff, cut, you know, tens of thousands of tiles to make the letters available to the teachers, and the teachers really bought in. And now in the spring, we're getting the emails from parents and the comments about the effect it has had on their children's reading and how much they've progressed. And the reading specialists were at the forefront of that. And so in a number of schools, I think there was a stretch of 4 or 5 schools in a row where the Teacher of the Year was the reading specialist. And that really shows the appreciation for those reading specialists. And then beyond that, to recognize an ag teacher as the Educator of the Year. I can't tell you how good that felt to see that we are at a point where ag programs, where CTE programs are being recognized. A few years ago in Indianapolis, I spoke with ag teachers, and they said, sometimes we feel, you know, we're a second tier of education. And now you have Janae Pettit from Broadway recognized as the Rockingham County Educator of the Year, receiving her Lucy in that event. And that was heartwarming, and it was absolutely a highlight. And I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Thank you to you all. My highlight would be that it's just good to be able now to get back out and get into the schools. And Mr. Falk and I and Dr. Scheichel were able to visit some schools last week. Time gets away. And I appreciate Dr. Scheichel arranging that. you know, it's good for us to be in the buildings and see what's going on, but it's also important that we not disrupt what's going on. So it's nice to have those visits where you can go in and sit and listen to what's happening in the classrooms without being disruptive there. I also would like to congratulate all of our teachers. This Teacher Appreciation Week that we just went through, and I appreciate all of them, because they are some working in very difficult circumstances. A lot of pressure being a teacher today. I spoke with someone I've known for nearly 40 years who's a 26-year veteran of our system, and they said, I just don't know where education is going, and all of the controversy that seems to be surrounding and encroaching from every side. And I just had to remind them that the Rockingham County Public School Foundation was not built on sand, that it was built on rock. And it will weather any storm that comes before it, as long as we have people who truly, truly care about the education that our kids get and how our taxpayers' monies are spent. And so I appreciate you all. I appreciate the difficult times as well as the good times. And we're just very grateful. I'm very grateful to be a small part of this great organization. Next, we will move to action items. We do have need to approve our minutes from the last meeting, and I will entertain a motion for approval if you have, or not if you have.
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Any questions or comments regarding those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is 5-0. Bills and mileage, April of 2022. We've been presented with those.
Yep, you have the bills and mileage for April in your materials, and I recommend approval of the bills as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheikele. You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion in support?
I move that we approve the April 2022 bills as presented.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin.
Can I have a few questions on that?
Can we get a second first, and then we'll have
All right,
discussion?
just a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Yeah, go right ahead, Mr. Grove.
Yeah, I just had a few questions of just going through it, and I don't know whether Dr. Scheikele, you can answer some of these or someone else, but the Allied Instructional on their O&M services paid $13,281 for March. Can you tell me a little bit about that? If you know anything, if not, you can get back with me on that.
To the line.
Yeah, I'll give you the.
Okay.
I'll give you the number here. Oh shoot, it's on the front. It's 2201-662-220.
Okay, go ahead.
62-220. This is the account number, but I don't have the.
Yeah, Ms. Mast, please.
For vision services that we provide in the district.
For what?
Vision services for children that need help visually. Some of that's maybe mobility too, which is if children need training with blind children with a cane.
Is that a yearly charge or monthly or when needed?
When needed. It's for most of this year, it's been monthly.
Okay. Shoot, what was it? Oh, do you know, Dr. Scheikele, if we use American Pest Management for our pest control, do you know why we don't use someone here locally?
That'd be a question for Mr. Reed.
They are here local. All right. I just didn't, when I looked them up, it looked like a national. Okay. Okay. That was my, going through this month's budget or expense. But that was one of the things I was going to ask about is if, Dr. Scheichel, if we could look into just making sure that we're spending or this funds locally throughout the year. I saw in here where I think it was a Walmart charge. I totaled it up. It was like over almost $6,000 that we spent for just Walmart purchases for educational purposes. So if we could, any local stores that we can use, I saw on that we go to Rockingham Co-op quite a bit instead of just, we go to Lowe's as well, but if we could spend money like at Ace Hardware, the Rockingham Co-op, things spending locally and giving out our money back locally, that'd be awesome if we could try to do that as best as we can in that. And I did have one more question because I was looking through here. There's a charge here at Martin's. It looks like someone bought some lobster, and I didn't have. I know. I really would like to know who got lobster. It's gosh, where was it at? I don't know. It's in here, but there's a lobster. If you could look into that, just why there was one charge of like $62, but it was just a lobster charge, like lobster and a few other things. So I would just like to know who got lobster.
It wasn't you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure for $65 didn't get an 18 count lobster.
No, it was
so,
a lobster
yeah,
plus 18
so
count.
it's probably something that contains lobster, maybe. It doesn't really explain in the bill. It says dill, lobster, CHK, live, Little Necks 18 count. So I can review that specific expense for you and get back to you.
Thank you on that.
Yeah, that's certainly not a whole lot of lobster we'd be purchasing for $65.
Yeah.
No,
So I'm assuming that's, again, I mean, we'll find that specific bill and I'll get back with you. And again, with local purchases, right, it's always tricky when you try to balance being a good steward of taxpayer money and not spending more than you need to. Every one of the companies, if you go to the local Walmart, of course, there's also local employees. So in every case, that's a trade-off, and certainly we can make sure that when we have a feasible option for a local expense, that we bring money back into this community. There's no question about it. As you know, when we, for example, all the school board dinners, it's a local family in Rockingham County that runs a restaurant and that provides that. And so we do our best where we can. Again, if teachers order supplies, that's a different issue depending on what you're buying, whether it's available. But certainly that's something to always keep in mind, that we want to support the local community.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up tonight, just to keep that in mind when we're spending taxpayer money. Sure. To spend it as much locally. I know we have local employees that are shopping at Walmart, but these little guys are out there trying to survive right now. And it'd be nice to be able to give them that $5,000-$6,000 to them would mean a lot. So if we could try to get back to them, that'd be great. I look like we did see Mr. Mason. We bought two new buses. Do you know where those buses went to? What district? If you don't, you can get back with me, but it's okay. I just saw it on here. It looked like there was a purchase for 2 new buses that were on there. Okay, all right. If you could just get back, I'd just like to know where those buses went to in the district. So that's it. But that's all the questions I have just going through it. So
yeah. It's always good to look through those. I know I do, and I'm sure the rest of you do, and to call and ask anytime for those in addition to here is okay. So any other questions with bills and payments?
If there's a way that the public wants to look at that, is there where they can go, Dr. Scheichel, to look at that? Is that anywhere on our website or anything for public knowledge?
So the bills are typically in executive content. When people request them, we make them available. It's certainly possible also if it's the board's desire to post those to public content after the board approves them. That's for the board to decide.
Yeah. 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 I have no
Yeah.
problem with them being made public after approval.
Yeah, it's with the bills, again, like, the questions that Mr. Cross asked, sometimes you have abbreviations, it's not really clear, again, but I think for the majority of these, where the money is spent. And I think that gives a good indication, for sure. Yeah, and mileage is mileage reimbursement that is work-related. So if someone drives to a conference, they can turn in a mileage reimbursement form. And then there are also just trips that are within the school division. So for example, IT staff have to use their own vehicles. We don't have vehicles for IT staff. And so they can get a mileage reimbursement for the miles that they drive.
Just as a matter of personal order.
Mhm.
Officer, would you mind looking out that window and seeing if there's a gray 2019 Chevy Camaro? I just got a notice on my phone that my car was driving off. Good. Good. Okay. That works. It's out there. Okay. Thank you for doing that. I know that's crazy, but I thought I bet if I didn't ask, I'd go out tonight and be needing a ride home. Okay. Other questions or comments regarding bills and mileage? So just so I understand, because I got distracted there by that. Or is it, we're not going to make it an action item, but through consensus, can we, is it okay with the board for those to be posted? The only caution that I have is as Dr. Scheichel has alluded to, sometimes the abbreviation makes them difficult unless you've got the actual bill to know what it went to. And
Why not we make it an action item at our next meeting to decide if we're going to begin posting
Yeah.
them? That gives Cheryl a chance to
yeah,
make it, because this, I'm going to be honest, this format is really hard to understand. And like, I'll bet your lobsters are like lobster puppets or something.
No, I'm sure it's a lobster. I wasn't saying there was 16 or 18
yeah.
lobsters they bought for $62.
No, but what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that
I'm from Maine,
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
the
Oh,
format.
And it's Martin's,
I know.
right? So it's likely food.
Right.
So-
I just saw a lobster on there. I'm like,
yeah,
why are we getting lobster? I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Well, but my
So-
point is that the format's clunky and it would give Cheryl a 2 weeks to clean it up and then us to talk to people and make sure we're not stepping out and doing something. And it is available on FOIA. So it's not like we're hiding it, but maybe make it a maybe user-friendly format.
Yeah,
Transparency
we
would be good for
put
the
it out.
public if we
Yeah,
could do it.
Yeah, but I
Agree.
think we should make it an action item at our next meeting.
That's fine.
Yeah, but we also have to be careful that we don't inundate the financial group with 5,000 requests to understand what a $30 bill is, too. And I'm all for transparency. Anything we can do to make that more accessible, we can do it. All right, let's vote on bills and mileage, if we may. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's 5-0. Thank you. Good discussion. Field trips.
You have 3 field trips for approval tonight. Massanutten Technical Center, Skills USA, 7 students will travel to Atlanta, Georgia, June 20th through the 25th. Broadway High School, FBLA National Leadership Conference, 2 students from June 28th to July 3rd to Chicago, Illinois, and Turner Ashby High School TSA Officer Workshop, June 3rd through the 5th, 1 student in Harrisonburg. And I recommend approval of those field trips.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Is there a motion in favor of the superintendent's recommendation?
I move we follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve the field trips as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Lore. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0. Authorization of signatures in the absence of superintendent. Dr. Scheichel.
Yeah, this is an annual authorization. So this is for 22-23. And this is the authorization for Doug Alderfer, Assistant Superintendent of Leadership and Academic Support, and Cheryl Mast, Chief Financial Officer, to sign all VDOE reports, documents, requisitions, and other official correspondence in the absence of the superintendent through June 30, 2023. So for example, if there's a state report that on a short timeline needs to be signed and I'm not available, then Dr. Alderfer or Ms. Mast can sign that. And so that's traditionally done every year.
Yep.
And
All right. You've heard the explanation and recommendation from the superintendent. Do I hear a motion in support?
I move that we support the recommendation as presented by the superintendent
Thank you,
regarding the authorization signatures.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. And again, this has been an annual process for as long as I can remember. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0 as well. Salary scales, Ms. Mast.
Chairman Breeden, members of the board, and Dr. Scheichel, in front of you this evening is our 22-23 wage and salary handbook for your approval. These salary scales and different wages reflect decisions that you made during the budget process.
Thank you, Ms. Mast. Dr. Scheichel.
I recommend approval of the salary scales for fiscal year 2023 as presented.
Thank you. And I will move to accept the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Questions?
What is the salary scale? What is the change in it? How come this isn't more transparent?
Okay, what I would recommend, Ms. Garrison, is we'd be happy to talk with you about it afterwards, but now it's the action of the board here that we're seeking and discussion from the board. But be happy to have some further explanation after we're through this process for you. Any questions or
I
comments?
was looking through this earlier. I didn't see coaches in there. Is that just because maybe they're in there? I didn't see. You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are they at?
It's
I
the
believe it's
second
page
from the
24.
last page.
Oh, okay, okay.
And they did extensive.
Gotcha. Thank you. I didn't see it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to kind of help clean some things up. Thank you for all your work on this. I noticed that you moved some things around, like you worked to make the coaching scales more equitable.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that. And then also, it's generally the raise that we approve through the budget process.
That's exactly, it's right.
Right.
It's the 5% raise for all employees, 7% raise for the teacher, and then the LPN scale and the custodian scale that you reviewed during the budget process.
And thank you so much, because I did have a question, the LPN scale,
Yes.
and I can't find it in here right now, because it's this book. All of it's in here. But the LPN scale, I did not, I turned right to it. I don't see the high schools. So we have supplements provided depending on the number of enrollment, but I didn't see, and maybe I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And there are
Okay.
ends.
Yeah.
So
High
high school
school
nurses
are
are
RN.
RN.
Yeah,
RN.
and I think that we do a supplement for the RNs as well, but I didn't realize. Okay, so high school nurses are paid as teachers at the high
That's
school level.
correct.
Okay,
But
very
then
good.
there's this stipend. It says if you have taken a position that is in the other schools, which is an LPN position.
Mhm.
It says there for an RN.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And this is a public document, correct?
Yes,
I mean,
it's on our webpage.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
this has not
Yeah,
been
until it's
posted yet,
approved,
but,
yes.
right, but last
Gotcha.
year's on the webpage.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions, comments from the board?
Thank you.
Here,
Yeah, thank you for all your work on it. I'm sorry.
that's okay. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Mast.
Yeah, and I would also like to thank Michelle Judd and the HR department for their work with Ms. Mast to review those and to make sure that they meet all the requirements as voted on by the board during the budget process. So those scales and the extensive review of the extracurricular stipends.
Awesome.
Okay, federal program applications for 2022-23. Ms. Painter.
Evening, Mr. Breeden, members of the board, Dr. Scheichel. On your agenda for action are the applications for 5 federal program grants, Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III, Title IV Part A, and Title I Part C. As part of the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, RCPS receives federal funds that are used to support schools that are serving struggling or high-need students, support the education of English learners who have limited English proficiency, and engage in strong best practices to effectively improve instruction and learning. We base all of our applications on leveled funding. We do have to reapply every July. Our final allocations will not be provided till early fall, and then approved applications will be amended with the new amounts. Posted on board docs and provided prior to this was summaries of what was written in each application. So if you have any questions, I'll try my best.
I do recommend approval of the federal programs application for 22-23, Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III, Title IV Part A, and Title I Part C as submitted by Dr. Painter. And I want to thank her for all the work she's put into these applications with staff, but her leadership on this has been amazing.
Could you explain the Title I Part C? The end of it, it says the partnership with James Madison University, which serves as the lead division agent and administrator of the Shenandoah Valley Migrant Education Program. Can you just explain that? Like what part do they,
Well,
what's their
JMU
role in it?
JMU has their own migrant ed
Okay,
office, and they take care of the program. We just file an application for them that we're going to participate.
okay.
So really, it's their program. We're just participating with it.
Thank you.
I move to follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve the federal program applications for 2022-2023, Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III, Title IV Part A, and Title I Part C as submitted by Dr. Painter.
Thank you, and you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Painter. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is 5-0. English Language Arts 6 through 12 textbook adoption state.
Good evening, Chair Breeden, members of the board, Dr. Scheichel. After piloting during the 2021-22 school year, I request board action for approval for Study Sync, that is a McGraw-Hill product for the English Language Arts textbook adoption in grades 6 through 12. This was the recommendation of the Textbook Adoption Committee established last year, and we piloted in each grade level, grades 6 through 12 during the course of this year. And then that was the recommendation for the adoption.
Thank you.
And I do recommend approval of the textbook recommendation as presented by Ms. Tate.
Thank you, Dr. Scheichel. Do I hear a motion in support?
I move that we support the recommendation regarding the Study Sync.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I got a question on this. When I went out and looked on their website for McGraw and Hill. One of the things that's concerning when I went to their website and looked at it, it says the study sync it's on their front page. It says study sync infuses all the literature you love, including an unmatched selection of texts from authors with diverse cultural backgrounds, which I don't have any problem with. And it says and gender identities. I just don't understand why we're sexualizing English for our students. I don't get that. And so tonight, I'm not voting I will vote against this. And hopefully in the future, I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar company that provides education and literature for our schools. But I don't get it. I don't understand why that's in there. You know, I don't get that. So I have
I mean, it's one of the selections from the Virginia Department of Education on the approved textbook list for us to select from. So we felt that this was the best resource in terms of material for teachers. And again, I'm not sure I would interpret it the same way, but.
How else do you interpret that where it says that with diverse cultural backgrounds and gender identities? I mean, I don't know how you'd otherwise interpret that other than you're adding sexualization into our English learners. And I don't understand why we have to do that. And so that's a problem I have as a board that we're doing this. So tonight I'm voting no for this, and hopefully in the future we can look for something better.
Okay. Thank you.
What exactly is Study Sync? Is it a book?
It's a
Is it-
textbook.
It's one textbook.
It's a textbook. There
Well, I
are,
mean, we're going to get lots of them, but
Right.
it's one copy of a textbook. It's not a computer program. It's not.
it comes with digital resources as well
Okay,
that align with the text and with the Virginia Standards of Learning.
thank you.
Do I have a motion in a second?
I think. you do.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments?
It's the committee and the teachers.
Yeah. We're all in this world together. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
That is 4-1. Thank you, Ms. Tate. Middle School English Learner Textbook Selection Committee, Dr. Shiflett.
Chair Breeden, members of the board, Dr. Scheikel. Policy IIAA in our policy manual outlines the procedures for adopting a review committee to evaluate new textbooks. And I am seeking approval for a review committee to select an appropriate EL textbook for Rockingham County Public Schools middle school EL classes. And I have provided you with a list of the members on that committee.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett.
I do recommend approval of the middle school EL textbook committee as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Scheikel. Is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. McQuilkin. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is 5-0. Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. We will move to an update on the review of Ramsey Education Curriculum for Economics and Personal Finance. And it's yours again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. At our February 14th meeting, I came to this board for an approval of a committee to look at the Ramsey Education Program. One of our local community partners had offered to pay for this product for our school division if we so desired to have it. And so this committee took a look at it, and basically at the end of the day, they decided, although the program was, a secular nature, it aligned with our curriculum, it didn't really offer a value to what they already were using. And they felt like they would not use the program and it would really be a waste of funds from the community partner. So they decided we would not seek approval. So I just want to give you an update on that. So I came to you looking for a committee to determine whether or not we want to use it. So I just want to bring you to sort of some closure to that if we can, just for your information.
it says it aligned with the standards, but would the committee say that it wasn't as good as what we're using?
Basically, or similar to what we're using, right? And so we're already using products like EverFi, which is free to us. So they really felt like it wasn't really fair to a community partner to pay this money, and then at the end of the year they say, okay, how much usage did you get, and not have much.
See.
So
All right.
yeah, but that's a good
Thank you.
question. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Pre-K program overview, Dr. Shiflett and Dr. Painter.
So currently, during this school year, I have been serving as the coordinator of our pre-K program. And as we transition and think about next year, Dr. Amy Painter will take on that role. So the two of us are going to sort of provide you an overview of our pre-K program. All right. Uh-oh. Oh, there it is. Okay. So Virginia Preschool Initiative, VPI, usually we refer to it as pre-K, distributes state funds to schools and community-based organizations to provide quality preschool programs for at-risk 4-year-olds. And there is options if school divisions would choose to do so to serve 3-year-olds, but we have opted not to do that. You can request a waiver, but our schools are pretty full, our classrooms are pretty full, and we haven't looked to serve 3-year-olds. Students must be 4 years old by September 30th. And occasionally we have a child who someone seeks, hey, October 1 birthday, but we follow the guidelines. It's September 30. And it is an at-risk program. So Dr. Painter is going to talk to you a little bit about the criteria, but it's meant to help serve students or families who have a need that's been determined by the criteria. So it's not really a child care program. And I know when I was serving as the principal at South River, occasionally I'd have conversations with families about that's not the purpose of the program. I know you need someone to watch your child from 8 to 3, but we've got to meet the criteria of the program. And the goal is to reduce disparities among young children entering kindergarten and to eliminate those risk factors that's been determined. We know that not all children are born with the same resources and opportunities. And so this is a way to try to help those kids maybe who didn't have some of those advantages, right? The kid can't help where he or she's born, right? That's just the family that they're raised in. So we try to help in ways that we can. How do we receive state funding? I got the clicker right. Yeah, it's me. We submit an application each spring. We just actually did that last week. That we are going to, provide a quality preschool program. We'll work with the community to provide health services and facilitate comprehensive services. We do have a family engagement coordinator, Michelle DeFries, who works to identify families who need extra assistance, and she works with them. And then we strive to get equity for all children. And we work with transportation to make sure these kids have a ride to school. What does it look like in Rockingham? We have at least one preschool classroom in each of our schools, 19 total preschool classrooms. So Cub Run, John C. Myers, Mountain View, and Plains each have 2 programs. Our goal is to have 18 students in each classroom with a full-time teacher and also an assistant. So our capacity for pre-K is 342 slots. The state allots us for this year 250 slots that they will pay for. The county then has a burden to pay for the others. We did request some additional spots just to help out with funding, and we'll have to wait until July to see if we can get those on a wait list.
Stop working, transcripts of all meetings.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay, good. And we also are working with our special ed department, and we have a program called Inclusive Placement Opportunities for Preschoolers. And if we have a child in our early childhood special education program who will spend the majority of his or her day in the 4-year-old program, we will allow them to count as one of the 18. But other than that, we try to stay at capacity. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a family service worker that helps promote families to resources that they may need or require to help them be successful in parenting or to help the child to be successful at school. And so now I'm going to let Dr. Painter talk a little bit about what the criteria we use to determine what students get into the program.
You run the clicker, please.
Yeah, I get the clicker.
Okay. So the big question we hear from parents and teachers alike is, how do we get our child in pre-K classroom? So the state gives us slots that are allocated to meet what they call state points. And you can get state points in 4 different ways. Family income at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, homelessness, the student's parents are high school dropouts, or the student has special needs or disabilities, and they meet the 350% of federal poverty guidelines. However, the Virginia Assembly right now is maybe going to vote on to take away the income requirement for the special needs or disabilities. So they really want you to have one of those 4 areas to earn some state points. And then there is local criteria. And we're allowed to give up to 15% of our slots to students that may only have the local criteria points. And what does that look like? There is a whole list. There's probably about 30 different things that we ask the parent about. Some of them are very personal questions, but we're trying to give them as many points as we can, such as single parent family, incarceration. Is there not a driver's license? One of the parents not have the driver's license. Is a parent absent from the home? Is there any history of any types of abuse in the home? They've now added a COVID-19 impact. They ask about if a parent or guardian has mental illness. You name it, it's on there to try to give kids points locally. Also, English language learners, their speech concerns. We actually have about 6 different items we ask the parent if they have concerns with, including speech, social interactions, things like that. And then there is a child screening done that also gives some local points. So how does this whole application acceptance process work? It all starts back in March when I always call it the kindergarten roundup. When you see advertisements for kindergarten and pre-K application time. So the window opens for the new school year, and the families that are interested call the school to set up kind of like an appointment. So in March and April, we invite the families to the school. It's at least one parent and a child. I've done this a bunch of times, so I don't have to read this for once. The parent talks to the principal to go through this whole interview process while the pre-K teacher works with the child. They do the same screening with all of them. It's scissors, pencil grip, looking at a book, that they know any letters in their names, typical things like that to see if they're what they call preschool ready. And that's done during March and April, and we assign points. The state points it's 10 points per item, so you can get a lot of points with state-wise if you're eligible. And May 1st, we do what we call our first round of formal acceptance. Our first 14 students, we decided back before it all started that our first 14 had to have state points to be invited into the program, just so that we can make sure that we hit those state requirements for making sure that we are inviting students that are at risk. Remaining eligible students are put on a waiting list. However, if they scored no points, no state, local, nothing, they're not considered eligible for the program, so they're not even put on the wait list. In May and June, we continue doing additional screenings as people call and are interested in the program. And in July 1st, any remaining slots in the program, we open it up to the next group of kids that were next on the ranking that had state points. Then if there's any spots after that, then we'll consider some that only have local points. August comes, if there's still spots open, which in some of the schools, like when I was at Linville, we typically had a few spots left. That's when, if there's consideration given to kids that aren't necessarily in your attendance district, there has to be a written request. They still must live in Rockingham. They had to have been screened at what's considered their home school. They have to be eligible with those state or local points. And first priority is given to students with the highest amount of points that is interested. And the parent also has to provide transportation. We didn't put that on there. And then the remainder of the school year, again, as you have families move in, if you know that they have preschool age children, we still invite them to apply because you could have an opening mid-year or at a local school, and it just rolls on all the way through the school year. We try to keep all of our classes full. Any questions?
Sorry, questions from the board?
Thank you so much for all of your work on this. Do we have many that get 0 points? Do you know?
There's a handful.
A handful, that's good.
Yeah.
Because
I
0
always say
points.
it's not a bad thing not to score.
Yeah.
Zero.
I feel like that's a really good thing. It shows that some of our kids are ready to come to kindergarten on their own. So, but thank you for all your work on that.
I don't have a question, but I would like to reiterate that this program is not a daycare or childcare program.
Correct.
And it's a program for,
It's for at-risk pre-K children, yes.
with strict criteria.
Strict criteria. And they're considered at risk based on the 4 state qualifiers.
Okay.
We're trying to do that. Actually,
92, I think. Something.
We requested 92, but last year we received 27 extra, I believe. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Board members, you have a financial review in your packet for your review. And we will move into school board questions. And I will begin with Ms. Lohr.
Let's see. Let's start with the fun question. How many students are here tonight for government class? Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. I hope you've enjoyed it. How many students are here just for fun? Yeah. Yeah. Our one lone fan. Thank you guys. Thank you all for coming. I hope you've all learned something tonight. One thing that you can learn tonight is that our last musical is coming up this weekend, correct? So if you haven't gotten to see a musical yet, Elkton Middle School will be doing Shrek Jr. And if you can make it, you should try, because our school musicals are excellent. So much fun to watch. And finally, I've got a question for Dr. Scheichel. And I think I already know the answer. I'm sure he'll already know the answer. But in light, first, where did we get this lovely gift? Who do we have to thank for this?
Rebecca Hill-Shiflett.
Rebecca Hill-Shiflett, thank you for promoting May as Mental Health Awareness Month. It says Go Green, Go Outside. They gave us some little cards to have fun outside. And I don't know about you all, but definitely going outside helps my mental health. And it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And in light of some very tragic suicides, Naomi Judd and Lauren Bennett, I knew I was going to mess it up, and I didn't have on my glasses. But Brunette. I just want to encourage everyone, if you feel like you need help, reach out. We have programs at all of our high schools. We're starting, tell us more about the Strong Starts program, or not Strong Starts.
Sources of Strength. Yep. It's a program, it's a suicide prevention program that started at Broadway High School. So Broadway High School became the pilot for that. Liza Kaufman, who will actually take over for Becky Hill-Shiflett as the Director of Support Services July 1. She worked very hard at Broadway to implement that program with a lot of support. There's faculty support, there are faculty sponsors of it, but it is driven by peers. So students go through extensive training, staff members go through extensive training, and it is really a program that focuses on, again, as the name says, sources of strength. So different students, find their strength in a number of different ways. And so there are a lot of activities where students find peers that they can relate to, where they get support from their peers. It does not mean that their peers are now counselors, right? There's certainly a role for professionals, but it is often in the peer group that students find support, and also students that can relate. And so this is a program that then is going to expand to our other high schools because it has been successful. It's very much based on research into successful programs. All the social emotional learning programs we pilot are endorsed by CASL, which is kind of the premier organization evaluating programs like that. And so Sources of Strength is one, again, that Liza and staff at Broadway implemented, and is specifically geared toward suicide prevention. But certainly, again, finding strength in peers and finding your own strength and the source of your strength goes far beyond suicide prevention. It's really important for mental health in general.
And do we have something at our middle school? If our middle school students need help, do they just reach out to the counselors?
Well, we have a number of different mental behavioral health staff in our schools that includes school counselors, that includes behavior specialists, our board certified behavior analysts, again, the whole tiered systems of support program. And again, Sources of Strength at this point, right? We're expanding it as we can, and then certainly there are models that also reach down to the middle school level. So these types of programs are important for all our schools. Certainly there's a difference between programs that you would implement at an elementary school when it comes to social and emotional learning. Students, have to, first of all, see an environment in which it is okay to say, I'm not okay. And I mean, that's the key piece. For such a long time, we've had this mental health stigma where people who struggled felt like it is simply a sign that there's something wrong with them and they can't admit that. And so I think it's critical that we have an environment where it is clear that when you're not okay, please talk to someone, talk to the caring adult in your life, in our buildings. And then there's a whole support network, right? With our early intervention counselors, for example, it reaches all the way. This is the reason why we partnered with CSB on that, so that there's this community of care. Because we know that, when we talk, and we're still working, on grant applications, for example, with Centera, to actually bring more mental health services to our schools. Our schools are community hubs. And, when you look at the research, for example, into trauma-informed care, when children grow up in environments that are traumatizing, if they have, a certain number of these adverse childhood experiences, these ACEs, and they have a high ACEs score, it changes how the brain is wired, and it is really difficult to correct that once you're in adulthood. And so our schools are really a key player in that. And, it's the community of care. And what they found is that oftentimes, right, when you're dealing with these circumstances, that it is family therapy that is needed. It's not just the student that's coming into our building, but it's that outreach and that community of care, whether it's through CSB, the Community Services Board, or Centera, to the families. And so we're, as we've expanded that tremendously over the last 4 years, and that will continue to be the case. We have school psychologists, social workers, nurses. So again, our teachers are participating in training programs, and it really is important for students to feel accepted, to feel cared for. It's a key piece of our community dialogue project. How do we make all students feel welcome and cared for? It has all kinds of impacts on learning, on behavior, and on general well-being. And so, students have to understand that it's okay to talk about this, and that mental health it shouldn't be, mental health issues shouldn't be a secret because it costs too many people their lives or a significant quality of life.
And if I, as a parent, need extra resources, can I reach out to the school?
Reach out to the school.
Great. Thank you very much.
Dr. McQuilkin.
Pass.
Mr. Cross.
Does the schools pay for the parents? Or do they just direct them in the right, like CSB or something like that?
Right, so they're community resources. So our schools actually don't provide, for example, psychotherapy, right? Our school counselors aren't therapists. And when we talk about early intervention counselors, it was one of the so when we talked about implementing, they used to be referred to as crisis counselors, so early intervention counselors. One option was for the schools to hire the early intervention counselors. They become our employees, and then they work with students. The other option was to actually let CSB, the Community Service Board, hire the early intervention counselors, provide them to us. We pay for their services. But what then happens is that when an early intervention counselor works with a student and there's kind of that additional need becomes evident, then it's the CSB's role to work with the family. And there are community resources available. So no, we don't have therapy sessions in our schools that are provided, but the CSB can connect the family to those resources. And so the grant applications with Centera, they would be, again, this wouldn't be paid for by the schools or actually run by the schools, but Centera RMH could provide some services to our students, but then also potentially to families in need. But no, we do not provide those services directly to the parents.
We don't pay for that?
No.
Okay. I heard you say that when she asked that question, so I just had a
No,
thought.
that's when we talk about community of care, it's connecting families because of what we see in schools with the students,
right?
To connect them to the community resources that are outside of RCPS. That's a great question.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one's simple: is where are we at on the book process that got appealed to central office?
Yeah. So the book is under review at the central office committee, and I do expect. Again, I don't have an actual date for the review, but we expect that that's done before the end of the school year. I know you and I had some conversations in terms of the general process. We have a policy in place, and at this point, the policy really has no timelines. So when a complaint about instructional materials is received at the school, it goes through the process at the school, and it doesn't say how long that process should take.
Right.
Then the person who complains is informed. They can either agree or disagree. If they disagree, they can file an appeal. Again, we've talked about creating a timeline where once that decision is available, appeal within whatever the timeline may be, 30 days. When it comes to central office for review, there is no existing timeline. And so we have to, I think about what a reasonable timeline should look like. We always have to consider that that's not the only task that someone has, of course, but that we want a reasonable response. And so I think that's a conversation maybe that can be had, during a board meeting in terms of what that policy revision should look like to create timelines that make sense. Oftentimes we deal with 30-day, 60-day timelines, but it's under review, and it's my understanding that a report should come, I believe, in May, so sometime this month.
Okay.
But I can check into it for you exactly, because again, the committee gets put together, everyone reads the book, there's conversation around it, and so then the next step, of course.
I saw it on the bills, so I'm guessing that we ordered a bunch of books
Right.
to get them to read. So
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Mhm.
The second thing, Dr. Scheichel, is can you clarify where we are at with our transgender policy when it comes to if a child comes into school and Billy says, I want to be called Sally from now on, and talks to the counselor, talks to the principal, whatever. What do we do as what's the principal do then, and how do we go about working with that child?
Right. So there's, if you remember, legislation basically passed a couple of years ago that said DOE needs to develop model policies. And then individual school divisions have to adopt policies that go at least as far as the model policies. The Supreme Court ruled on one of the cases when it comes to restroom policy, and the Supreme Court used Title IX and the 14th Amendment as the source of their decision. And so in Rockingham County, what happened was rather than implementing detailed policies, the model policies from DOE, our stance was that the ultimate goal is non-discrimination, and preventing bullying and discrimination and harassment based on a number of factors, and gender identity being one of them. And so we didn't put a policy, the board did not put a policy in place, and we didn't bring one to the board for vote that had details about it. And so when we talk about non-discrimination, the key piece is to treat people equally, regardless of their gender, their gender identity, sexual orientation, race, national origin, and so on. And so there isn't a policy in place on what we do. And so we basically handle a student coming to us and saying, I want to be called this. Student comes to the teacher and says, my name is Dan, and I want to be called Danny. Right? We call the student Danny. My wife's name is Danelle, so her nickname as a child was also Danny, right? So if Danelle comes to the teacher and says, hey, I want to be called Danny, same thing. If a student comes, in Italy, Maria is a common name for boys, actually. And so a student comes and says, this is what I want to be called.
This is different, though, what I'm saying. This is different than nickname Matthew to Matt. It's as Billy to Sally.
Right.
That's what I'm asking about.
Right. And so if we don't call the parents when Matthew wants to be called Matt, then we also don't call the parents on a nickname that is,
so you're
different.
You're
However, let me say though about name changes, right? Because there is also a formal process. So for example,
that's a bad example that you just gave right there. That's from saying Matt to Matt or Dan to Danny.
Mhm.
That's a bad example when I ask a question. And I'm not getting upset at you, Dr. Scheichel, but this does bother me because a parent names their child at birth, and that's what I'm trying to get at tonight. And so that's a bad example to say I want to go from being called Matt to Sally when Sally is clearly a female name and Matt's a boy, a male name, and that was my question I'm asking you tonight. So that to kind of water that down right there, that's not the question I asked. What do we do as administrators when Billy, a male, says I want to be called Sally now? And that's not his name. What's the process there?
If a student requests a name change, so they want their email changed, they want their name in PowerSchool changed, so their official student record should reflect a different name, that has to go through the parents. Simple as that. But it's also the nature of not treating people differently, right? The non-discrimination statement says we will not treat people differently based on gender identity. And so if we don't call the parents when Dan wants to be called Danny, then we also don't do it in other cases. Now, that doesn't mean there's a requirement for the teacher to call the student that. There's no guarantee that the student will always be called that. But if a student comes into the classroom and says, I want to be called Danny, or in your case, right, then it's treated the same way. That's the nature of a non-discrimination statement.
So you're telling me that if my son goes into his classroom, tells his teacher, I no longer want to be called Hezekiah, I want to be called Sally, that's up to the teacher discretion whether she's going to call my son by the birth name that I gave him or by the name that he wants to go by.
Sure. If Dan says, I want to be called Matt, same thing.
Are you serious? We're leaving that discretion in the hands of teachers and administrators to do that.
We've never
and not giving that to parents.
We've never asked teachers.
I can't believe what I'm hearing tonight.
We've never asked teachers to call the parents when a student says, I want to be called.
That's a totally different.
It's
that
not.
is totally different, Dr. Scheichel.
Not totally different.
Absolutely different.
Nope. That's the nature
You're
of
an
a
educated man,
statement.
Dr. Scheichel. You are very educated. And for you to say that that's no different, that is ridiculous.
So you would come up with a list of approved male names and female names, and then if it doesn't match? But if Giuseppe comes and says,
different, Dr. Scheichel. If my name's Matthew, my dad named me Matthew. I go by Matt.
What
That's
if
my
you wanted to
nickname.
go by Q?
It's not a different name. So if Billy, you see, you're trying to just water this over and be cute about it. That's not cute, and it's not watering over. So you're telling me that we're leaving this up to teacher discretion and administrator discretion, and parents have no say of what their kids are called by at school. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm telling
Is
you
that what you're saying?
that if a student comes to a teacher and says, I want to be called, unless it's an obscene term, right, that violates the speech code, we don't notify the parents if a student wants to be called by a certain name. That's what I'm telling you.
That is, school board, that's wrong. That's 100% wrong that we're allowing this to happen in Rockingham County.
So
And
where do you draw the line?
I want at the next meeting, I'd like to have an action item to make sure this does not happen, have a clear policy of this going on in our schools
So where do you draw the line?
by parents. If a
Okay.
parent wants their child to be called by a different gender name, then that's up to the parent,
But what
not the
about
school.
What about my neighbor Gary? Grew up next door to Gary. Hey, Gary, went to school. Everybody at school knew him as Gary. And then one day I called up, hey, can I speak to Gary? I get Gary's dad. And they're like, yeah, you called? I was like, yeah, I need to talk to Gary. They're like, oh, you mean Alan. We named him Alan, but he goes by Gary at school. So where do you start drawing the line? How do you decide who gets called what?
This is very simple. Why are we making it so difficult? This is
Where do
very
you
simple.
My uncle
Where do you
was,
draw the line? You draw the line is if my name's Matthew and I want to go by Matt, then it's okay to say it's common sense. Where's common sense gone? We are arguing about common sense tonight.
my uncle is William, but they called him Cotton. I mean, so
This
where do you draw the line?
You draw the line when a parent has no say in when their child wants to change their gender identity name in school. That's where you draw the line at. So if Matthew wants to be called Matt, that's cool. It's been done like common sense, been done like that for decades. But you're telling me that, and the question tonight is, if Billy wants to be called Sally, it's whatever. And that's wrong. And then the school board, I'd like to, not Dr. Breeden, but Chairman Breeden, to have at next meeting on the action item to vote on this. Clear, and we'll come up, we can sit down and talk about a clear policy when it comes to this, but parents should have a say in what their children are being called when they're at the school.
Okay.
And it should not be left in the hands of teachers or administrators to decide on what they're going to call their kids at school.
If you would like to present a policy suggestion.
Absolutely.
Of course, as you know, policy has to be presented at one meeting and voted on the next. And that's a matter of transparency.
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, that's okay.
No,
Well,
this is a, I'm sorry, ma'am, you're out of order. Yes, you are. This is a board meeting, this is a board discussion, not a community discussion at this point. What I would say, there is the suggested policy. You and I have talked about this before, a suggested policy. But I think the key, as I understood it from Dr. Scheichel, is that when you are consistent under non-discrimination, you may interpret it as common sense, but it's being interpreted here as being consistent in the non-discrimination, whether a person wants to be called Dan or Danny, or Dan or Danielle, right? And so that's all the stuff that we can discuss in that. I think we do have to give credence to the notion that if we have a male who is named Christopher who wants to be called Chris, is that any different than a girl named Christine who wants to be called Chris? I think we have to be thinking about those kinds of things. And so if you bring that policy, we'll look at it and I would say that we would not vote on a policy at first presentation. It has to go through the review process, as all policies do. And we'll go with that. Any other questions, Mr. Cross?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Falk?
I will say, I hadn't planned to, but I will say that I have I place a great amount of trust in the integrity and judgment of our administrators and our. That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Chaco? Okay.
I'll pass.
Thank you. It's been an interesting week for me personally with some people that I know that I've lost and some that are not doing too well. That's part of the reason I've been watching my phone tonight to see if there was any messages that came across. But I heard a quote this week that I will leave you with. And it says, live every day like it's your last, because one day you're going to be right. We have need to enter into closed meeting, and I move that the board enter a closed meeting to discuss and consider the following pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1. Personnel, specific public officers, appointees, or employees for the purpose of considering such individuals' assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, salary, or resignation. And A29, to discuss the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and discuss the terms or scope of such contract where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the school board. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Mr. Falk. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I will take that as 5-0, and we will be in closed meeting. Thank you all for being here tonight. And if students, you've not had your agenda signed, we'll be happy to get those. And be safe going home.